Yeah, so I had heard of fight or flight, right? And I had seen it at other people. I knew what that looked like. So I wasn't terribly aware of it until I had been there for a while. And I realized, oh, I can't even, the words regulation and parasympathetic were not in my vocabulary at that time. I didn't know much about that, but I just knew I had to bring my energy to a place where I could calm down. I could see more clearly. I could think clearly and have more meaningful relationships.
So if you could go back and speak to the Amy who was lying awake at night, heart pounding with fear, imagining the worst, what would you tell her now about what was about to unfold? Here you are years later.
I think that's a great technique, is to kind of, write from your older self to your younger self and vice versa.
No, it's again, therapeutic again.
It is. It is a therapeutic device that works beautifully. I would, to go back to one of your previous questions, I would say, you could have been open to something sooner, asking for help sooner. That's always great advice. And I'm sure that's something that you think about in your work too, where you see people wait and suffer for months or years before they reach out to you for some therapy, some talking it out. And
Have you ever faced a moment that changed everything? A loss, a new path, or an awakening that forced you to rewrite your life? Pivot Point is a podcast that explores those stories. I'm Nick Michael. We'll dive into how pain can spark growth and how crisis leads to clarity. Subscribe to Pivot Point today.
Welcome to Pivot Point Strategy for Change. I'm your host, Nick Michael. This podcast explores the moments when pressure, uncertainty, and inner conflict intersect, and when a single insight or decision creates a meaningful shift in how someone relates to themselves, their emotions, and their life. Some pivot points arrive loudly through a sudden career disruption, a relationship ending, or a life circumstance that forces immediate change. But other pivot points are far quieter. They emerge internally, often after years of trying to manage, cope, or push through. These are the moments when someone realizes that despite insight, experience, and best efforts, something still feels stuck. And in that realization, a deeper question begins to form. What if the real shift doesn't come from fixing the situation, but from changing how I relate to it? Today's conversation will resonate with anyone who has ever felt a pull toward something meaningful, especially when that pull is accompanied by hesitation, self-doubt, or the fear of stepping fully into their voice. My guest today is Amy Collette. Amy helps speakers, coaches, and entrepreneurs become authors by guiding them through the process of turning their lived experience, insight, and hard-earned wisdom into impactful nonfiction books. Through personalized book coaching and her Unleash Your Inner Author curriculum and community, Amy supports aspiring authors from start to finish, not just with structure and strategy, but with encouragement, clarity, and belief in their voice. Today, we're going to explore the moments that shape us, the internal shifts that change everything, and how choosing to step toward meaning, especially during times of uncertainty, can become a powerful pivot point. Amy, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really looking forward to this, as you know. Is there a defining pivot point in your life that you'd like to begin with today?
yeah, I think there's so many stories in our lives, Nick, and I love these questions about pivot points. So I just have to pluck one out from my experience, but
Sure.
I'll go with one that really made a profound difference in my life in a lot of different ways. So had been working in a different business. It was my business, and it had been going great for about 10 years. And then it wasn't. All of a sudden, I lost two of my biggest clients within a couple of weeks. No fault of my own. They just went their different directions. One went out of business, one sold the business, and they just didn't need my services anymore. So I was crushed, and it was really hard to get myself out of it. I had fallen into what I call a state of perpetual fight or flight. I was anxious all the time, the kind of anxious where your heart beats out of your chest kind of thing all the time. It's hard to sleep. It's hard to just focus on anything else but what was going wrong, you know? So I finally realized that it was me that needed to change. It really wasn't even the circumstance of, getting more business or feeling differently was up to me. So I had read a book many, many years before, like when I was a teenager, and it was a young adult book. I can't find now, but anyway, it had a story in there. It was about this kid who really admired his grandparents for this practice that they had of giving thanks for their blessings a couple of times a day. And so he started doing that. And so I thought, well, that's a really good idea. Maybe I could do that. And at that time I thought, well, I don't even have anything to be grateful for, but I'll give it a try. I'll force myself. So I did. I did it in the morning when I woke up and then in the evening before I went to bed. And in a couple of days, I was sleeping better. I was having moments where I was calmer and my heart wasn't pounding out of my chest. And so that was huge right there. But it had such a profound effect that I kept doing it, kept doing it. And then I started looking for things to be grateful for, and I was surprised by how much I had to be grateful for. And I realized I was missing out on this whole big, juicy pie of my life. But at that time, I was just focusing on one little slice that wasn't going perfect.
It speaks to what you focus on, really. Is that made a major
Exactly.
difference for you?
That's exactly it. So this gratitude practice really became what I consider my spiritual practice now. And within about a week, my energy had turned around so much that I was attracting new clients. It was magnetizing energies that I had not been able to before because I was in such a bad state. And so it taught me so much, not just about energy, but about how that energy attracts or repels people from you. So that's a lesson that just keeps on teaching me. With every day I continue to practice gratitude, I learn something new.
That's wonderful to hear. I'm curious, what were the thoughts running through your mind during those sleepless nights when fear was constant? Like, what were you most afraid would happen? I'm curious about
Yeah,
the
that's a great
nature.
question. It was fear. It was fear of the future. And that's one thing I realized when I started practicing gratitude is I had been constantly focused on the future. I'm taking a bad situation that had happened and extrapolating it out, months or years into thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose all my friends. I'm going to be a bag lady on the street. I had all these very dramatic fears that were running the show, really. And that's how I was also relating to people. So anxiety can so much affect your relationships. And that's what I was, I said I was being a bad date in business because I was coming across like a needy date, like, please like me. I really, really want to work with you. Come on, let's have a second date. And, it wasn't working very well because my energy just was not in a place where I could actually build a relationship and put someone else's needs before mine.
I like the way you refer to it as your energy. You describe waking up with your heart pounding and your mind racing, picturing losing your house. How aware were you at the time that your nervous system was in a constant state of fight or flight? What was it that gave you that?
Yeah, so I had heard of fight or flight, right? And I had seen it at other people. I knew what that looked like. So I wasn't terribly aware of it until I had been there for a while. And I realized, oh, I can't even, the words regulation and parasympathetic were not in my vocabulary at that time. I didn't know much about that, but I just knew I had to bring my energy to a place where I could calm down. I could see more clearly. I could think clearly and have more meaningful relationships instead of just being focused on my own worries.
So, what felt most frightening then in those moments? Was it the financial reality itself, or what it symbolized about your safety or worth or your future?
Yeah, I think there were a lot of things. I think financial was probably my biggest thing at that time because I was extrapolating out to like, oh, this is going to go on forever and I'm never going to find a way out of it. Right. And so that's where I was stuck. but I was also beating myself up for not having a pipeline, a marketing pipeline. I had gotten pretty complacent because I had long-term clients, and so I wasn't out there networking and making new business partners and that kind of thing. I just wasn't doing it. And so that was an opportunity to beat myself up for not doing that. But
Yeah,
long term, it was a great lesson.
you were going through the shoulds. You were saying, I should have done this and should have done that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, all the interjects that we talk about. Was there a
Yeah.
specific breaking moment, a night, or conversation, realization that made you say something has to change now? Was there anything?
Yeah, I kind of realized I had been thinking that all my problems were caused by something else or somebody else, you know? And so I was looking for something outside of me to change that for a long time. And I can't remember exactly what it was, that aha moment that said, girl, it's you, But, with every personal development program or book that you read, that's the lesson, right? That everything, when you're pointing your finger at somebody, the rest of your fingers are pointing back at you.
Right, you're not
And it's
making.
really
Yeah,
it's all
yeah,
within.
yeah. No, you're not taking responsibility. So, what made gratitude the choice you reached for when you felt you barely had the capacity to do anything at all? How did you choose? Why practice the gratitude in that moment?
Yeah. It was so one day I was finally able to kind of calm down enough to go into meditation. And I just asked for help, what do I need to know today? And this memory of the book I told you about kind of floated in, of this practice called, I think it's pronounced Hakarat Hatov
Kind of
in the Jewish tradition. And I thought, yeah, it just felt like something I should try. Even though I was skeptical at the time about it, I didn't think really anything would work. But I thought, well, it's worth a try. So it was just kind of a gift from the universe, I feel like, that just floated in that day. And I was sick enough of feeling bad that I just wanted to feel a little bit better. And
you were
I
sick
thought,
and tired. Yeah.
that could make I wasn't even thinking about happiness or joy or anything like that. I just wanted to feel a tiny bit better. And so that's really did the trick.
So, what was it like in the early times early days of when you were doing it? Did it feel forced or fake? And then what kept you going? Because sometimes we go through the motions until we finally feel it. I'm wondering if that was what
Yeah.
happened for you.
I'm a big believer in trying things, and, faking it till you make it
Yeah.
even. And that's what it started out as. I thought, well, I'll try. And so what I did, Nick, that was a little bit different. I didn't write a list. I didn't do that kind of thing that really would involve my mind, because I'm a writer. And once I start writing, I go into, I should prioritize these, or is everything spelled right? And, is this long enough list? I get all in my head about it. So I
Critical
didn't want
mode.
to do
Yeah.
that. I wanted to feel it. I wanted to feel something. So what I did was I put my hands on my heart like this, crossing my hands over my chest. And that alone, I know now, is a great way to help regulate your nervous system, right? If you do that, you'll just feel your shoulders come down, right? And you just feel a little more calm. And I've seen it over and over again when I teach this. A group of people will just automatically take a deeper breath and calm down. And that's what happened to me. And so I wanted to feel gratitude first. Remember what gratitude felt like. So that's what I did. I just took a few deep breaths and felt gratitude. And then all the things started coming into my mind. And my beautiful home, my wonderful husband, my friends, my old dog that I got to walk every day, all these things. And I thought I was kind of overwhelmed because, like I said, I didn't think I had anything to be grateful for. And I realized I did. So that was a big eye opener. And that's what kept me going. I thought, okay, that felt pretty good. I think I want to do that again tomorrow.
It sounds like you had a really significant impact almost immediately when you first tried it.
Yes, I
Like
have
it
to
had
say it
it.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
just even to get that calm for a few minutes. Because this takes 2 or 3 minutes. It's not a long
right.
process. But just to get that break in the anxiety was wonderful. And so that's what made me stick to it, because that was like it was a high point of my day, really. And then over time, it just got better and better.
I know it's a structured, repeated practice, not just a mood. Do you think the structure itself was part of what made it work, especially when motivation for you was kind of low? You were still experimenting, worrying. Do you think the
Absolutely.
structure? Yeah, I was wondering.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I am a habit person.
Yeah,
I
We
know,
all
and I
creatures of
had read
habit.
somewhere that if you wanna replace a bad habit, or if you wanna get rid of a bad habit,
Yes.
replace it with a
Yes.
good one.
A good habit. Yes.
It's hard just to stop something, right? It's so much easier to do something else instead of that thing you were doing before. So instead of just continuing to spend on my worries, and I would do this even if I woke up at 3 a.m., worried about all the things, I could put my hands on my heart, breathe, and do my gratitude feeling and go back to sleep. So it became a real survival and, to where I could go into thriving instead of just surviving. But it became a very dear and practiced habit with me. And, so much that I ended up writing a book about it.
Yes. Yeah, the book is amazing. I read the book. Was there a part of you that resisted the idea that something as simple as gratitude could possibly help you in a situation so serious? The critical mind will kick in and say, "What?
Yeah.
That's
This
it?
silly habit that's just two
Yeah,
minutes a day.
this is what
Right. The brain, always
yeah,
knows best or thinks it
yeah.
does. So, oh yeah, I was, that's what I meant when I said skeptical. I thought, well, it's worth a try, but how much difference could it really make? I had no idea because I thought, oh my gosh, do I need years of therapy to get out of this? What do I need? But I thought, well, in the short term, I'll try this and see what happens.
You're listening to Pivot Point Strategy for Change. If today's conversation resonated with you, take a moment to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. It truly helps others find the show and supports the work we're doing here. You can find Pivot Point Strategy for Change on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like a deeper dive into the work we explore on the show, I invite you to visit my Substack page where I share in-depth articles and reflections.
Yeah.
When did you recognize then that, let's say, you had more control over your nervous system or that you could feed your nervous system something that, it needed so much of? Like, it must have been like realizing, wow, why couldn't I do this sooner? Like, did you
Yeah.
feel a loss like if I only tried this sooner? Like many people say, they wait to do things until the very end when there's a dire, desperate need.
Yeah.
Did you have any of that? I'm curious.
It's interesting. At that time, I didn't look back and say, "Oh, man, I wish I would have done this sooner." I was just so happy to have found it because I was finding increased happiness. I was having moments of joy and I realized I had become a real hermit. I was isolating. As it happens when you start feeling depressed or anxious, you can really just feel more safe in your own little environment and not invite people in or go out of that environment. So I realized I was doing a lot of those things. So it just opened up my perspective more than anything. And that perspective helped me find more things to try, little practices, and start sharing it with other people and then seeing a difference in them. So yeah, I'm a big believer in habits and just in that structure.
Yeah. You mentioned moving from relief to love to the joy and then peace over time. How would you describe that evolution? And what did it teach you about healing from within?
Yeah, you had asked me about the nervous system too. Like I said, I didn't know that much about my nervous system, but I did realize I had control, because I think the first feeling was, oh, I just get a moment of relief from feeling the anxiety, right? And knowing that, oh, maybe I can replicate this, maybe I could draw it out, And so when things started turning around within a week, I start getting calls with new projects and offers to travel with friends and all kinds of things were opening up to me that had just been shut down for months. At least I thought they were shut down.
Right, right.
Either I wasn't seeing them or I wasn't attracting them. And so that made a huge difference. And I thought, wow, this really makes a difference. And it's me doing it. It's not coming from outside. So it was that realization that I did have some control and that we all have that control, that, gratitude and any feeling that we feel is actually a choice. And that struck me because here's the big change that you just made me remember, Nick. And that is, I really thought that I was just the way I was. Take it or leave it. that I was this way. I was grumpy in the morning. I need my coffee before you talk to me, all that kind of thing. And after doing this, I realized, oh, I am not naturally grumpy in the morning. That's a choice.
Choice.
That's
Yeah.
something I decide to do or not every day. And I'm not that way anymore. I mean, I'm one of those obnoxious morning people.
But you need your routine, is what you're saying, which is most of us do.
Yeah, because I made that a habit. When you start out with gratitude and you start out feeling good, you don't need coffee to wake up. You don't need to be grumpy and nasty in the morning because you feel good.
I'm impressed with how you, in such a short time, it made a significant difference because very often people get stuck in the why. And when you work with someone clinically, they want to know why they're doing something. It's fascinating to hear your perspective on this and how it made a significant impact and change in your life by focusing on the skill and what to do and go back to gratitude, which is written about thousands of years ago. And here you are, a simplistic concept, and you're implementing it on a daily basis with skepticism. And you're a thinker. You're critical. You're left brain. You're right brain too. You can combine the both, but you were willing to give up and give it a good, honest effort, which is just fascinating to hear, and which is why what attracts me to the work I'm doing now and looking to bring your story to others is because it could be just that simple, just to begin that way.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. What started to change then in the rest? Did it have an impact on other aspects of your life? Personally, you said professionally. What else did you notice?
Yeah, what made me realize that it was that I was pushing my relationships away, even my closest one with my husband. When I get up and I'm grumpy in the morning, that's not very attractive. It's not really fun to have a conversation with somebody like that, right? So I realized that in my relationships, I was either pushing them away because when I'm under stress or I feel anxious, I don't reach out for help. I'm not calling people to say, "Hey, let's go do happy hour or let's have brunch," or I'm hunkered by
You go
myself.
inward,
I
which
go
is
inward for
yeah.
sure.
Because
Yeah,
you seem to be, and I know you must be someone who's self-reliant. So you're not going to sit and
mm,
reach out. I'm going to take care of it. So
right,
that's
right.
almost learned, and you've embraced that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, all that childhood stuff that makes that
No,
happen, right?
but you know what is how can I put it? When I work with people who are deep thinkers or critical thinkers, they're very effective at what they do, and they get very much into their head. But you have a nice balance, which is a wonderful thing to see. And I can imagine how that when you're working with someone to write their story, how you can connect on the multi levels that are necessary in getting them to reach to that point of reaching out. And I saw some of the work you had done with a couple of authors you had online. And that is very difficult for people who are self-reliant to say, I need help or help me do this because
Absolutely.
it's not my best. I need to make it my best. And then there's a trust factor. So I can certainly see the work that you do is amazing, really, because you're developing the level of rapport and connection with everyone. And your story speaks for itself, and you come from the same place. So you're walking it and you're talking it and you've lived it. And that increases the level of trust and connection with themselves and then with you. And then they trust your process as they go through the program from what I'm reading.
Right. Right. That's very insightful, Nick. I mean, so
Well,
you see that in your own work, where people have to trust you and open up.
yeah,
And it's hard to
yeah,
ask for help
yes.
when
But you
you've
respect that.
absolutely, because yeah, it's hard for me too.
Yes.
And yeah, yeah. So that's one thing that I really appreciate about people when they do ask for help because we're all raised to be self-reliant.
Yes.
But we're also all not experts at everything. And
Yeah.
sometimes we just talking it out with someone who you can trust and you can rely on, like a therapist or a coach, then that can really help you get those perceptions of yourself, those aha moments, realizations that can help you heal, can help you write about something that was traumatic and what the lessons that you learned from that, right? And bring that to the world. Because that's a scary thing too, is that visibility of people really knowing who you are.
You're listening to Pivot Point Strategy for Change. If today's conversation resonated with you, take a moment to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. It truly helps others find the show and supports the work we're doing here. I can see how much of a leader you are, a great leader, because you're leading, you're leading through their process, and you're patient with it, and you're very respectful of the resistance. There's a lot of resistance that comes up,
Yeah.
and you're laughing because you know you've seen that, and I've seen that
Yeah.
in some of
Well, and I've
the show.
experienced it
You've
myself.
experienced it, right? Certainly lends to the opportunity to give you leverage to really bring them to the point to say, trust me, I've been through this. Trust the process, trust yourself, trust me, and let's get this done, because that's very therapeutic. I'm impressed with how you're you're not a clinician, but you're using you're therapeutic in your approach in a very subtle, very respectful, sophisticated manner. It's just very.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's a big compliment coming from you.
Yeah, no,
I appreciate
this
that.
is great, because I think the work you're doing is amazing with getting people to the point where they can just tell their story, and not just one story. They're going on and on, so
Yeah.
they can take it further and further. And the coaching you do is just, it's just remarkable. It certainly shows the love and the passion that you have for the work that you're doing, because
Yeah.
that's what makes it work. I mean, I imagine everyone who works with you is really fortunate to work with you. That's my point.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm fortunate to work with them too, because I learn from every single person I work with. I mean, I'm sure you get insights from your clients too.
Yeah.
They see things and process things because we all have an absolutely unique perspective. We're filtering everything through our experiences and through our inner knowing, and we come out with something different. So it's just such a joy for me to work with different people who are writing about their own experiences and finding their own unique way of seeing the world, because it absolutely helps other people have their own aha moments and see themselves in a unique way too.
Yeah, the work you're doing to empower others to tap into themselves, and to then put what's in them out there. It's just because if you think about, you read a book, you can't recall what the name of it was, but you knew and remembered what it meant and the value of that. And that's just the whole thing. Can you imagine others who are going to be reading the books of the people that you coached in the work that they're doing, and the impact that would have? I mean, because this is where it all begins. It's wonderful to hear your story about how you
Yeah.
get people
Yeah.
to get to that point. I'm curious, when work opportunities suddenly reappeared within a few days, how did you understand that timing? Was it coincidence, cause and effect, or something more symbolic? How did you understand it at the time? Because it's at the
Yeah,
time.
I really knew it was my energy. I knew there was a cause and effect. It wasn't just, oh, what a coincidence, because I had changed my energy enough where I was just putting a different vibration out there. I talk about one of my missions is to help raise the positive vibration of the planet, right? And I'm not kidding when I talk about that, because, if you've ever been down even just for a few days, that when you come out of that and you feel better, you are vibrating at a different frequency, a higher frequency, right? And people are attracted to you, and I don't mean romantically, I just mean
Yes, of
energetically.
course.
People
Yes.
want to be around you. They want to
There's
have
an
a
attraction. Yeah.
conversation with you. They want to just connect, right? And so that's what was happening for sure, because I was then open to it too. So now that I had changed my vibration, I was open to new opportunities and to things coming in. Closed down and in that tight space of anxiety, where your world just gets like a tunnel and you can't see out of it. But you also can't get those opportunities coming in if you're living in a tunnel. So that's how I saw it, very much as an energetic change in my own vibration that was attracting those opportunities. It was too obvious to
It's
be
amazing.
coincidence.
Now, your husband, friends, and your family noticed a change in you before circumstances actually changed. What do you think they were responding to? How did they feel and sense you differently?
Yeah. I had to think about that for a
Yeah,
second, but I think it is just that openness, right? Where when I was in anxiety, I felt tight. My chest felt tight. My body felt tight. I think my energy, I had brought my energy in very close so I would feel safe. Safety is such a trigger for so many of us, that feeling of safety, and I didn't feel safe. So I had brought my energy in really close and tight, which meant I was also closing everyone else out. So I think when I started feeling more open and more that relief, that happiness started coming up, I was starting to feel more myself because I'm not a isolated, depressed person by nature. I am very open and friendly. And so when that started happening again, I think people just felt it and they were wanting to be around me more. And also, even when someone's sick, you kind of give them their space and you say, oh, I'll leave them alone for a few days so they feel better, kind of thing. It felt like that to me, like they were giving me my space because I didn't want any company. And so when I felt differently, it just, I think they could sense it very palpably.
Well said. I mean, you've described yourself as being a joyous person rather than just someone who practices gratitude occasionally. When did gratitude stop being something you did and start being who you are? And is that the same shift you help others, like other authors, make when they stop trying to write the book and start seeing themselves as writers? Because, when they embrace that, I'm a writer now. Now I could.
Yeah, that is a very insightful question too. Yeah, I think I started realizing after probably a few months of practicing gratitude and telling people about it. I mean, I became like the poster child for gratitude. Gratitude was the answer for everything. And for me, that's honestly true that it has been become really a focal point of my life. And so if I'm struggling with anything, I go to gratitude first. So I became really the person who was always talking about that and just found more and more joy in that. And I think for it became my identity. I think that's where you're going with that is it became something I so connected with. And that's what the authors who come to me to get their concepts out there, get their message and their story out there. They are compelled to serve others, to help others elevate their own lives. And so they're pretty on fire already about their ideas, but they're also scared about some things and telling some of their stories, which are not always easy stories to tell. How much of that story to tell, how to tell it, how to share it. And so that is really something that's fun for me to help them with because they don't have to tell all the story. They don't have to tell every detail or go into all the trauma, right? They can pick and choose and do it in a way that's healthy for them.
See, the way you're coming across, the way you're describing that, it's just so comforting. It's so connecting and empathic, and you're giving them permission because I'm imagining they're overwhelmed with thoughts and emotions about sharing a part or a piece of themselves that they're very tightly wound up about, but they want to share. And you get what we call this push pull with this approach avoidance. You want to, but you don't. Not too much. Just stop. Stop. You're getting too close. Stop. And you go back and forth. And they're probably giving you that. And then, and I read, and I heard you in one, I know you prefer people to, most of the time, it seems like you get people who've written something and are coming to you to get it done, to get it finished, right? I know you mentioned that when someone begins with your program and they start from it, and they start doing it from reading and being involved in it, it improves the work and it gets it streamlined compared to you have a way of describing it instead of having them rewrite everything. Or it sounds like there's a whole process that if they follow your path, they'll get there.
Yeah, I really,
You know
some
what I'm
people have written a lot of stuff. I really prefer for people to start with me before
right.
they've
Am I
written
am I
most.
putting it right? You have to explain it so I could.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're right on that I have this whole process because I found out through doing this for a while that when people write in isolation and they don't have any help thinking things through and really asking the tough questions that they don't think to ask themselves, right? That they write too much and they do have this push pull in it. They've been writing for years, right? And they haven't gotten anywhere. So I start with them with thinking about becoming an author. That's why I call my program Unleash Your Inner Author. It's not just writer, it's author. Like you're going to put this story out there for other folks. So it's changing that identity, right? It's getting that idea planted in their
Embracing,
head early
yes,
so that they
embracing
talk
being an
about
author.
that. But yeah, also to say, hey, you don't have to tell everything. It's not an autobiography from the moment you were born till now, right? It's curated. And so that's what I help them do is curate exactly the message that they want to share that's going to help their audience, their readers, get to where they need to be.
See, that's exactly why I think everyone working with you is so fortunate. And I mean that sincerely because
Thank you so much.
I know the type of person you're referring to, the overthinker, the attention to detail, the ruminating thoughts, almost the obsessive type of personality that needs to start from the beginning and get to the end and feels that important need not to leave anything out. And when they start working in isolation, they get stuck along the way because nothing is going to come out perfect. And if they're the type that needs perfection or has a high standard, let's just say high standard, they usually trip over their own feet. And then it becomes a long Odyssey journey. I think of the Odyssey and I think of the Iliad
Right.
and the long journey
Yeah.
that was taken to get back home, to get to when everything was done. And then realizing I didn't need to do it that much. Where were you when I needed you? I didn't see you, or I found you, but I ignored you, meaning your program. And then I didn't take the step and I should have done it sooner. And that whole loop begins again. And then you're telling them, well, respectfully telling them, everything you've written is great. And then you're saying, you don't have to, you have to rewrite it. And then they're getting obsessed over now having to redo that. And then there's a release and a relief finally from them when they can surrender, you're right, I will do it that way. And then it just flows. I can just see it. And I saw it with that person you had done that online with, which was amazing. I
Yeah.
thought that was amazing. Her process over the 6-month period was unbelievable. So I'm going to go back to that. That's what a true coach does. Again, you're using therapeutic methods probably naturally because you've experienced it and done it. But your goal is always the same. I need to get you to write and to tap into that inner author that you are. So
Yeah.
embrace that, and accept that you're now, it's like when teachers start becoming teachers, they're in training or clinicians, they have to embrace, now I'm the expert. I'm not an imposter.
Mhm.
I'm stepping in, embrace, this is who I am. Take the critique. You see, that's the hard part for many. It's the critique, but your manner and your approach is just spot on with all of that. So if you could go back and speak to the Amy who was lying awake at night, heart pounding with fear, imagining the worst, what would you tell her now about what was about to unfold? Here you are years later.
I think that's a great technique is to kind of, write from your older self to your younger self and vice versa.
No, it's again, therapeutic again.
It is. It is a therapeutic device that works beautifully. Yeah, I would, to go back to one of your previous questions, I would say, you could have been open to something sooner, asking for help sooner. That's always great advice. And I'm sure that's something that you think about in your work too, where you see people wait and suffer for months or years before they reach out to you for some therapy, some talking it out and just feeling a little bit better. So yeah, that's what I would say. Hey, Amy, it's going to be okay. But the thing is that I didn't expect at that time was that I was kind of so far down in my rut that I couldn't see out. I couldn't see what was possible. Like I said, I just wanted to feel a little incrementally better. And what happened was I found a whole new way of being, a way of getting back to myself and even improving on that. That can be an ongoing process. It's not like you ever get there.
It is. It's a
Personal
journey.
development and spiritual growth and all those things are an ongoing commitment to yourself. It's a self-love that you continue to do daily if you can. Like I said, big believer in habits and that daily practice that gets you incrementally to a place you couldn't even imagine. So I couldn't imagine having the life that I have now back then when I was suffering through that and, just the impact that gratitude would have on my life. So, if anybody's suffering right now and they're thinking it's going to just be like this forever, that perspective that things generally get better is really great to have when you're feeling like that. And you can just try that gratitude practice for a couple of minutes, couple of times a day and see what happens.
Is there anything you can tell our listeners before we close, anything that would be useful about you that you'd like them to know about your work or anything in particular?
Yeah, I was really encouraged to find out that I could be as adaptable as I was.
Flexible.
That I could change and grow fairly easily. And I think some people don't really think that's true for themselves. And so I'd love for people to encourage people to be open to that idea, that things can get better, that they can take a little control today and have a couple of good minutes today that are going to grow into a few more tomorrow and the next day, and may grow into something you can't even imagine right now. So that's something that I couldn't see then and I can see now, and I want everybody to know.
I appreciate hearing that, and I'm sure our listeners are thrilled to hear that. It's so impactful what you're doing. You're having an unbelievable impact. And what's amazing is I'm sure you will never know, we'll never know the residual impact of all of this, but it's impacting those that you're coming into direct contact with, and then it just continues from there, which is so wonderful. Amy, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your insight, your experience, and your passion so generously. This conversation really highlights something important, that writing a book isn't just about producing pages or becoming an author. It's about stepping into your voice, trusting your perspective, and allowing yourself to be seen in a way that can truly help others. If you've been listening and felt that familiar nudge, the thought that maybe there's a book inside me, I hope today's conversation helped normalize that hesitation, while also reminding you that meaningful change often starts on the other side of fear. As we talked about today, that inner pull is rarely accidental. For those who want to learn more about Amy's work, explore her book, coaching, or connect with the Unleash Your Inner Author curriculum and community, we'll be sure to include the information in the show. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us for another episode of Pivot Point Strategy for Change. Remember, growth doesn't always come from massive, dramatic shifts. Sometimes it begins with one intentional decision, one brave step, or one story you finally allow yourself to tell. Amy, thank you very much. I appreciate you spending time with us. And I know if there's other things that come up in the future, I look forward to hearing back from you, having you back on. There are other pivot points to talk about that you'd like to share.
Thank you so much, Nick. I've enjoyed our time together.
Until next time, I leave you all with one question. What's your pivot point?